Hi.
Make sure it is gone.
Hi, Michelle.
Well, hi, Michelle.
Hello. I guess we got a picture of Michelle.
Yay. Oh, good. You can see her, huh?
Just a picture of her.
Okay.
It's a picture. Hi, Maddie. I can see the mayor and Amy and Maddie.
That's what I see too.
That's what I see.
Yes, we have Alonzo, Judy, Misty, Amy, and I. So we're missing Kevin and Martha.
Evan's there if you scroll
I'm
down.
here. Oh, is he? Oh, okay, good.
You gotta scroll down.
Scroll down. Oh, there's Kevin. Hi, Kevin. Hey. Yay, you're part of the team, dude.
But no more.
No video, huh?
No, apparently not.
I
Just
tried.
like
It doesn't like me.
Yeah,
The cameras on the tablets aren't working?
No, it has more to do with the software. It wants to download it and run it on the little machine. I tried to install it, and it didn't like me. So
Same thing for me, Kevin. Same here.
well, thanks.
All right, we're live streaming now. We're on.
it got it, but
Thank you, Mr. Piper.
We're on.
Welcome,
there's
Cresswell.
a little like the little U icon down at the bottom, and if you click on it, you just get this white screen with it saying loading. So I don't know. It's trying.
My hair. I fix my hair.
You should have my problem, Michelle. Mine's a whole lot easier.
I actually got dressed and did my hair and makeup
Yeah?
for this meeting, so.
I got my PJ
Gotta be proud of
bottoms
myself.
on.
Michelle, I just told the others, but I'll tell you, I'm gonna turn my video off until it's the item that I'll speak to.
Okay.
But I'm still here listening.
Okay. I'm gonna turn my audio off.
So I still don't see Martha, so we will start the meeting here in about, according to my calendar clock, about 2.5 minutes, so. So did all counselors get a chance to review the practices and principles that Michelle created?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, yes, I did. Mayor, I just one question. Now, will you guys be unmuting us?
Yes,
Like it
the host will be unmuting as needed.
Okay, so I just keep mine muted then, right now?
Right now you're talking. And then you hit the microphone again and it will mute your conversation.
And then I just leave it there?
And leave it muted in for the time being, yes,
Okay.
I think it's gonna work like your microphones, that when you wanna talk, you unmute yourself and then you mute
Okay.
yourself when you're not talking. I thank you for reading the information that we sent. It was a team effort, I have to tell you. There were several people who worked on it, so I wish I could take credit for it, but it's a team effort.
Well, we appreciate it, so.
Thank you, Michelle.
So I see Kevin and Alonzo still with their microphones on, so why don't you guys go ahead and mute. Oh, and it looks like Martha has joined the team too. Welcome, Martha.
Why does some of them say Cottage Grove and some of them say?
That's weird. That just.
My apologies for being late.
You are not late. You still have about 30 seconds. You're doing good.
Oh, good. It took me a minute to find the invite in my spam folder. Please disregard my past communications to y'all.
That's okay, Martha. We appreciate you being here. Thank you. Well, according to my clock, we have 7 o'clock. So I will go ahead and bang my knuckles as my gavel, and we will call this telephonic meeting of the Creswell City Council to order for April 13th, 2020. First item on the agenda is the public forum. We don't have any public to speak tonight, so I would like to ask, is there any written letters and so forth that have been written for public forum?
Roll call.
Oh,
Roberta.
Not at this time. We do have one for the public hearing though.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Mr.
All right,
Mayor.
well, that moves us. Yes, sir.
Sorry to interrupt, but Roberta had raised her hand. She said she needs roll call.
Oh, you're absolutely correct. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So we will go ahead and do a roll call vote at this point. So I'm going to follow through as it says in the agenda, which is alphabetically. So Councillor Castilla. And councillors, go ahead and unmute and say your name and say that you're present.
Alonso Castilla, present.
Okay. Councillor Drago.
Judy Drago, present.
Council President Knudsen.
Amy Knudsen, present.
Councillor Inman.
Misty Inman, present.
Councillor McReynolds.
Councilor McReynolds, present.
Councillor Prochu.
Present.
Very good. And Mayor Zetterval is present. So thank you very much for the reminder, Roberta, that we're all in kind of a learning curve here. We don't normally have to do that as we can see each other's faces. So we are moving along with our technology as best we can. So this is Crestwell's probably first ever telephonic city council meeting in the history of the city. So this is going to be interesting, and I think we will all learn things from it, and hopefully we will get the work done that we need to get done and meet the requirements of our city charter. So the next item on our agenda is the mayor's report. So I've got a little written piece that I want to read. Over the last several weeks, cities in Crestwell, or cities like Crestwell across America, find themselves in a variety, very scary and difficult time. I think we, as Oregonians, can feel particularly fortunate in knowing that our cases of the novel coronavirus are as relatively low as they are. As of 2 o'clock this afternoon, Oregon had 1,527 confirmed cases and 52 deaths. While just to our north, the state of Washington had 10,530 cases and 510 deaths. That's 10 times what the state of Oregon is. So we are very fortunate that we are being as small impact as we have had so far. And as you know, as of March 23rd, the City Council held an emergency special City Council meeting to consider and adopt a resolution 2020-05, a resolution establishing temporary state of emergency within the boundaries of the City Council, or within the boundaries of the City of Crestwell. The City Council adopted the resolution unanimously 7-0. Since that date, and also as a result of Governor Brown's executive order and the adoption of the City Council's state of emergency, several things have changed around Crestwell. The most obviously is the closure of our parks, as well as the closure of City Hall to visitors. The majority of City Hall is now working from home, and City Hall is staffed by a much smaller staff at this point until an undetermined amount of time. We're hoping it's going to be sooner than later, but we have to be safe. Over the past several weeks, Manager Amberg and I have been taking part in a large number of telephone conference calls with a wide variety of people and agencies, varying from the federal government, Oregon's Governor Kate Brown, League of Oregon Cities, Oregon Mayors Association, U.S. Senators Jeff Merkley and Ron Wyden, and as well with city staff. There's been an enormous amount of information that has been presented in these conference calls that would offer help and assistance to the Crestwell businesses and assistance to those who find themselves or family members unemployed. Ms. Amberg and I have been working very hard to get as much information as possible out to the Crestwell community and to the Crestwell, and is being posted upon the Crestwell Facebook page. So that's probably the best place to go to seek information that we are garnering and can give resources to people, you know, with either assistance with unemployment, small business loans, assistance from agencies, all kinds of things. So great place to look for. In conclusion, my heart goes out to every Crestwell individual and business and family member in Crestwell that is being impacted by the coronavirus. This is an extremely scary and challenging time for all of us, and literally is affecting every aspect of our society. Tens of thousands of Oregonians have applied for unemployment, and thousands of small businesses have applied for assistance from the federal government and Small Business Administration. I pledge that I will do everything I can to work as hard as I can to continue to bring help for Crestwell so we can recover as quickly from this as possible. If we can safely patronize local businesses, I urge you to do so. My wife and I have done so on several occasions, and the help we have given them has been just vastly, just a wonderful feeling to do that. We're going to get through this together, and Creswell isn't known as a friendly city for nothing. Be safe, stay healthy, and stay home and save lives. So that moves us on to item 3 on the agenda, which is correspondence. Council, is there any question on the correspondence portion or comments? I hear the microphone click on. Is Councilor McReynolds, would you like to speak?
No, thank you. I was just gonna confirm I had no comments.
Okay, very good. It's okay. All right, that takes us to item 4 on our agenda, which is the consent calendar. All items listed are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion in the form listed below. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council requests for an item to be removed from the consent calendar and considered to be considered separately. Councilors, is there any items that would be like to be separated? Okay, hearing none, I am engaging in a motion, please.
I'll take the motion.
Thank you, Councilor Knudsen.
I move we approve the consent calendar as presented.
Okay, the motion has been made to accept the consent calendar as presented. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And who was this?
Is Councilor Brachiu?
Thank you very much, sir. So a motion has been made by Councilor President Knudsen and has been seconded by Councilor Prochu. All those in favor, we're going to do a roll call vote, and we will again go in order. Councilor Castillo, your vote, please.
Alonso Castillo, I vote yes.
Okay, thank you, sir. Councilor Grago.
Judy Drago, yes.
Council President Knudsen.
Amy Knudsen, yes.
Councilor Inman.
Councilor Inman, yes.
Very good. Councilor McReynolds.
Councilor McReynolds, yes.
Councilor Prochu.
Councilor Brachiu, yes.
And Mayor Zettervall votes yes. So that, are there any nays? No, we have to say that. Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. So that moves us on to our administrative report. And that'll move us over to Manager Amber.
Thank you, Mayor. The first item on the administrator's report is the bills. I'd be happy to try and answer any questions you might have.
I guess we'll wait. Yeah, well, I guess we'll wait and hear if anybody chimes in. If not, then I'll let you move forward.
Okay. Since there's no questions on the bills, the next is the Lane County Sheriff's report. I do not know if Sergeant Denham is on the line. I know he was going to try to call in, but I'm not sure if he did.
I do see one unknown caller down there.
That's probably me.
Yeah, very welcome. Thank you, Sergeant Denham. Counselor, Sergeant Denham has joined us. If you have any questions in regards to the monthly police activity report.
And I do have a question. This is Councilor Brachiu.
Okay, sir, go ahead.
Sergeant Denham, welcome. Thank you for all of your hard work and the work of your team through all of this. Really appreciate it. As usual, I will ask my normal question related to transient and homeless calls for service and any noticeable change or difference. I do remember hearing about a fire out at the airport. I'd like to know a little bit more about that if you know anything.
The only thing that we've been able to establish with the fire out there is that there was a transient camp that had been set up. I don't know how long it's been there. I think it's probably been relatively recent, but they weren't able to identify any particular person that was there. There was nobody out there when it started. So we haven't found any identifying materials out there, no mail or no other things. There was some stuff that we believe possibly might have been stolen that got burned up, but we couldn't trace it back to any actual stolen reports. So they're still doing some investigating, and from what we've seen ODOT is going to have a hazmat team go out there and clean that up. Some type of hazardous material type thing, just because of the fire and not knowing what was out there. So that actually, the actual fire was on ODOT property and not on the airport. They just used the airport to access the area because they can't get back there from the other side, from Dale Cooney. And that's an area we've had problems with transients before, and they bury themselves back in there, and we can't tell that they're there because there's no foot traffic or anything that goes in and out of there. So technically they're going inside on property that's outside the city, but it affects the airport. But other than that, the transient issues, we haven't really had any. Most of them have been just about as hunkered down. They're not hanging out as much. We still have the normal parkers that since we haven't restricted parking in the parking across the street from City Hall, that gentleman that parks there every day for the daytime still is there, and the one out at Garden Lake Park just uses the pullout areas now on Milton Road. So they're all still coming into town. They just, they don't really have a presence other than they just sit.
I know what they usually do then.
Yeah, there's been no change. Actually, most of them have been a little bit calmer. Our loudest one, Sam, hasn't been seen. I think he's up in Eugene somewhere, or maybe he finally made it to Illinois. But he hasn't been around, so that hasn't been a problem. We've had some people float into town and then float back out after a day or so.
It's my understanding from the neighborhood watch coordinator in Fern Ridge, Dave Quirk, that they've been seeing a spike in crimes, vehicles being broken into, that type of thing. Have we noticed anything here in Creswell that's different than usual right now?
No, not so much vehicles being broken into. Between the Elmira area and the Creswell area and definitely the surrounding area and down into Cottage Grove, we've seen a rash of actual stolen cars. So we had one yesterday, we had one last week. These are mostly like older Hondas that are easy to start with shaved keys. But it seems that the folks that are stealing them in Bonita and driving them to either here or South Cottage Grove or into Douglas County and stealing one here and taking them back. And so they're going back and forth over the hill. But we've got a couple of forest deputies that are working with Douglas County to try to catch that ring and stop them. They've got a couple of good suspects, but they still haven't caught up with them yet. So that's been a little bit of uptick there, but we've had a much bigger uptick just in the last couple of weeks. The March numbers looked relatively low because everybody was getting used to that and actually following. And kids were on vacation from school rather than stuck at home from school. And so now we're seeing an uptick in runaway juvenile calls, and then domestic disputes, people getting frustrated, and along with the domestics comes suicidal type calls where we're doing welfare checks on people who are frustrated and either taking pills or making statements to their family members that they're going to hurt themselves.
This is a particularly tough time, so I can imagine that that's a situation that you might have to deal with more of as time goes on. So hopefully things will resolve sooner than later. Thank you for that report.
No problem.
Thank you, Sergeant Denham. I appreciate that. Other councilors, is there any questions for Sergeant Denham? Well, I don't hear any, Scott, so thank you very much for your time, sir. Enjoy the rest of your evening. And again, thank you so much for your dedication to Creswell and doing everything that you can to help in these trying times. This has got to be a really difficult time, not only for doing your job, but to try and keep you and your deputies safe. I mean, that's something that is prime concern for all of us in the city, is to make sure you and your deputies are all safe and doing your job appropriately, and you have this proper safety equipment. So I can't thank you enough, sir. So make sure you pass that on to the other deputies.
I will.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right, back to you, Michelle.
Thank you. As you can see from the city attorney's report, we did not have very many hours charged to our account from the city attorney. We don't have a code enforcement report this month. He's one of the folks who is not working very many hours right now. The building permit report is interesting in that we actually had more building permits this last month than in February. So we're hoping to see that increase, of course, as we get closer to building season. And then you have your strategic plan and goals quarterly update. I'd be happy to review any of it with you or update you on, give you further explanation on any of the update if you need.
I appreciate you going through and doing this, and especially doing it in 2 different colors. It makes it real easy to read, and I really appreciate that. So, councilors, are there any comments, questions for Manager Amberg in regards to this? Well, hearing none, I guess we will. Oh, there we go. Who is this?
Sorry, Councilor Inman. I also just want to double what you said, Mr. Mayor. I really appreciate the report as well as the multicolor. It was easy to read and easy to see all the updates. So thank you.
You know, I have to say I'm pretty proud of everybody here at City Hall, given, you know, the current circumstances. We still are getting a lot done. And that's just because everyone here is really pulling together as a team and they're doing a great job. So
That to me is a testament to the dedication of the staff that you've put together, Michelle.
Yeah, they're great people.
You really are.
The last report that you have is just an update. Something that we'll probably be looking at as staff in the coming months, maybe years, is that the state has changed its attitude towards what it believes is its responsibility in the building inspection function, and they are pushing more onto the local jurisdictions. And so I was talking to the mayor about this, and he asked me to give a list of the things that we may be needing to look at as a city and what we might be ready to take on or need to plan to take on. And so that's what this list is all about.
Yeah, this is the first time I've seen the list in this in complex way. And it's astonishing to see some of the things that they're pushing off to the cities. And it's really incredible. You know, when you think about, you know, cell phone towers and radio towers and so forth and TV towers, I mean, that is just an amazing thing to be pushing off to a local jurisdiction. That's
Right.
two of the things that really struck me is that one. And then the other one was, what was it? Retaining walls and so forth too. And the importance there might be as far as, you know, in a public right of way or in that type of thing. It just, that's pretty complex stuff to be, you know, having the cities and localities have to come through and pick up the tab on that, so to speak, and develop the, you know, the parameters, how we do it.
Yeah, those are two really good examples of programs where we don't have anything in place. You know, we do, you know, if we went down the list, we do inspect the work primarily done in the public right of way. We already do that. Public Works does that. We do nuisance abatement, although dangerous buildings is something a little bit more sophisticated than what we have. We have a nuisance abatement ordinance, but we are working on a dangerous buildings one. Fire safety during construction is overseen by the fire district. Demolition permits, we issue them. I'm not quite sure. That's probably something we need to look at a little bit more. The protection of adjoining property is probably something that government should not be getting into. That's kind of between two private property owners. Temporary use of streets, that's probably our responsibility, and I think we have always taken that on. The inspection of portable fire extinguishers is something that we pay somebody to do. Mechanical equipment not specifically addressed in the state's code. We don't know what that means. Nobody seems to have their
pretty ambiguous language.
Yeah, nobody seems to have it nailed down. Hydraulic flood control, we don't have anything like that here. Inspecting fences, we do that. Inspection of retaining walls, we'll need to review what we have there and make sure that We have a good program for that. Tank inspections. We don't do that. And that might be DEQ. We need to double check and see who does tank inspections. But yeah, you're right. Cell phones, radio and television tower inspections. We haven't really gotten into that. Flag poles. We haven't really done much of that. Signs not attached to buildings. We have a sign code, but we don't have a safety code for those signs. So we might have to work on that. Ground mounted photovoltaic array inspections.
Hold on, what was that?
Not sure that we have any standards in our building code, so we might have to look at that. Of course, we don't need to worry about floating structures, docks, or fixed piers and wharves. Transitional housing inspections. I'm not quite sure what they meant by that, and so we're all kind of scratching our head and going, maybe we'll figure that out as we go. Inspection of equipment shelters, 250 square feet or less. We do have a requirement for a permit for that. So maybe we need to broaden that out. The flood program, again, that's a bit ambiguous. We have a federal flood plain manager. We partner with the city of Cottage Grove for that, but I'm not sure that that's what that really means. Inspections of detached tents and other membrane structures. Again, nobody really knows what is expected there. So we need to do a little bit more in-depth research, and we'll be bringing some information forward on those areas in the future.
Okay, very good.
I have a question, please. Martha McReynolds here.
Okay, go ahead.
I have a couple questions. Like regarding the flood program and the tanks inspection stuff, that's redundant to DEQ oversight already, and there's something that seems redundant. It's not going to be demanded necessarily at the state level. What's the sort of pushback we can give and say we're not in charge of this, or we don't want to?
Well, this isn't demanded of us. We're not saying, they're not saying, well, we're not going to do it, but we expect you to do it. What they're saying is, as a building inspection service, we're not going to write the codes for this. You need to decide how you're going to provide this, if you're going to provide this in the future. And so our response may be, well, tank inspections are DEQ, and we'll take whatever their inspection, entails, and that will be good enough for us.
So there's a chance that we could start at the point that the state leaves off and then develop as we wish in the future, if that stuff we're going to administrate ourselves.
Well, I think if we wanted to do something on storage tanks, we would have to work with the DEQ, because we can't supersede, we can't do more than what the state says, but the state DEQ might be willing to work with us if we had some specific things that we thought needed to be inspected. Like I said, this isn't something that they're telling us we have to do. They're just telling us they're not going to do it anymore.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. I appreciate it.
And that's just for building inspection. That's not for the DEQ. The DEQ will continue to do what they do.
This is all just specifically inspection.
Right.
Okay. I know it says that, but it's such an overwhelming list.
It is. You're right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Councilor McReynolds. Okay, that concludes the administrative report, and that moves us on to council action items, of which we have one tonight. And the one that we have tonight is ordinance number 539, amending the Creswell Comprehensive Land Use Plan for this and Creswell Development Code related to Goal 7, natural hazard policies, and floodplain overlay maps.
Mayor Zedivil?
So we are having, yes, sir.
Roberta Tharp's got her hand up. City Recorder Tharp has a caller who wants to call in and give testimony.
Okay, very good. I will give you the high sign once I read through the script that I have here for the
I think she
public
wants to
hearing.
listen to the whole thing.
Mayor, she needs to hear the script.
Yeah. So we need to call her.
She needs to hear the script.
Yes.
So if you could wait till she's online, that would be
Oh, I
great.
see. I apologize. Okay.
Give me just
Now
a
I
second. We'll
understand.
give her a call.
In the meantime, we will have this brief musical interlude.
Yeah, it's all part of learning how to do all of this and make it work together.
Yes, it is.
I gotta give kudos to everyone who's helped bring you this production tonight. We're not production
Joni?
people, we're not TV
Yeah.
people, we don't
This is
really
Roberta.
do this
from
very
City
often, so.
It's amazing how quickly the team put this together to have the
Okay.
capacity to do this tonight. It's pretty astonishing.
It's a pretty rigged together system, but thank you for your
Okay,
patience.
I'm gonna need, I can listen
Oh,
to
we
him
figured this
on
out.
my, on YouTube. If he wants to read it through the YouTube, I'll listen to that if you want.
Okay, were you going to make public testimony?
Yeah, I do want to say a couple of things.
Okay, so we're starting this at the beginning of this item, and the mayor will read a script, and then he will let you know when it's your turn to speak. You'll need to,
Okay.
and if you'll just say your name and your address for the record when you begin your talking.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, are we set?
I think we're all set, Mayor.
Okay, very good, thank you. The city council will be considering case number PA 2020-02, a request by the city of Cresswell to amend the Cresswell Comprehensive Land Use Plan and Development Code to align with the state of Oregon's model floodplain ordinance and Lane County's multi-jurisdictional natural hazard mitigation plan. That's a mouthful. Policies and goals drawn from Cresswell is annexed to the countywide MHMP. Maddie, what is MHMP? So for people who do not know.
Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan.
Thank you. So anyway, to annex the countywide NHMP will amend and replace the comprehensive plan goals and policies related to Goal 7, natural hazards. Approvals of the proposed amendments would amend Section 2.7 of Cresswell's Development Code related to the floodplain overlay zone. This application will be reviewed under the following sections of the Cresswell Development Code. Section 4.1.500, Type 4, Roman numeral 4, Legislative Amendments Review, OAR 660-018, Post-Acknowledged Amendments, and Section Roman numeral 3 of the Cresswell Comprehensive Land Use Plan. Testimony, arguments, and evidence presented must be directed toward the applicable Cresswell Development Code approval criteria. The failure of anyone to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the city council and parties opportunity to respond will preclude appeal on this issue. The failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to approval criteria or proposed conditions of approval will sufficient specificity to allow the city to respond to the issue, procedures, and actions for damages in circuit court. The public hearing of Goal 7 and Floodplain Code Amendments, case number PA-2020-02 is now open. I will bang my gavel. Councilors, do you have any ex parte contact, visited the site, or actual or potential conflict of interest or bias to declare? I will call a roll call vote on this to acknowledge your answer. Good, and we'll go in alphabetical order. Councilor Castilla.
Castilla, no.
Councilor Brago. Councilor Brago? Are you there? Councilor Drago, do you have a response? We'll come back to Councilor Drago. Council President Knudsen.
So is this the same as the last public hearing we had about land? So is it if we own property in the city limits, we have to say that that could be a potential conflict of interest? No,
No, this is, if I might speak to it, Mayor. A conflict or perceived conflict of interest might occur if a person owned property that was within the floodplain overlay zone, which if you bought property in the city of Crestwell and it was zoned or was considered floodplain property, like in the 100-year floodplain, then you may have a perceived conflict of interest. But in that case, you might also have the same results as with the last public hearing, where unless you can show that it would have a financial impact or that you would financially benefit from the outcome of this hearing, that you are not clear on how that potential conflict might affect the value of your property.
okay. And we would have gotten some sort of notice that we live within that zone or area. Okay, so no, I do not have a conflict of interest.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Inman.
Counselor Inman, and no, I do not have a conflict of interest.
Okay, Councillor McReynolds.
Councillor McReynolds here. I have no conflict of interest here.
Councillor Brochu.
Councillor Brochu here, no conflict.
Mayor Zetterval present and no conflict. I will go back to Councillor Drago. Councillor Drago. How do we move forward without a response? Councillor Drago, are you there?
You can move forward. She just can't vote on this. It's as if she's not here. It's as if she exited the meeting if we can't get her to respond.
Okay, very good. Okay, so we have opened the meeting to this point. So testimony, we wish to hear from everyone who is interested in the proposal. Are there any written comments? In this case, we have one written comment. Is the caller that's on the phone also the one that submitted the written comment, Roberta?
Yes. Jim, just do you answer for me? Yeah.
Roberta says yes. Uh-oh, can you hear me?
No, I can.
Okay, Roberta says yes, it is the same person.
Okay. All right. If this person would like to identify themselves and go ahead and give their testimony at this time, please.
Yes, I am that person, and my name is Joni, last name Mogstad. I live on Old Dillard Road outside of Eugene. So I don't live in Crestwell, although I have. Over many years I have. And I own property that is not inside the city limits, but is in your urban growth boundary and is surrounded by the city. And I feel like what affects my neighbors may well affect me. And so that's why I chose to learn more about this issue. You have my written notes. I put them together pretty quickly because after I got the material from Maddie, she's been very helpful. And I just wanted to remind you about a couple of things to emphasize some of what I said and expand on it a little bit. I probably don't have a lot of time here to talk, but I gave you one example of where a branch of the government can move in and make changes that will it can affect a lot of property, and they don't need to comply with all of these FEMA requirements. They don't get permits. They just don't do what they're going to do. An example of that, as I said, is that I-5 freeway and how they built those bridges that serve to constrict or divert the waters of the river, because they built those bridges pretty narrow on that highway. Another example that occurred to me this afternoon is the Lane County landfill at Short Mountain. I've heard for years that the elevation of the land between the river and Highway 99 increases only about 11 inches across that whole area. And Short Mountain has filled in that whole big, huge area down there along by where Ricketts Road comes in and along there, if you look across the freeway at that huge mound. And we saw an example of how that displaces the water from the river at a high river time and covers Highway 99 now. And so those kinds of actions on the part of government agencies can have a huge effect on us as individual property owners, and there's just not a whole lot we can do about it. Nothing we can do about it that I know of. And yet we're going to adopt this even more restrictive thing into the city master plan because FEMA says we should. And so we're listening to the federal government tell us how to manage our land and our properties. And we're letting them do that. We're just like, I feel like we're sheep. And we can't see what's coming down the road, but it's gonna be questionable for me whether we really own this property anymore or not. Another question that I have that didn't ever really get answered has to do with what's called a cumulative substantial improvement is one of their standards. And if you guys adopt this, you're adopting this as a standard that if you have a property that's at risk for flood and you do structural improvements that over a 10-year period exceed 50% of the market value of that structure, then the whole structure has to be brought up to standard to meet the floodplain design standards that FEMA has set. And so it doesn't say when that time starts. So if you've done like a 25% increase in value already, and 7 years later now you want to do some more, it says it's cumulative. So you gotta either be careful to keep it under 50% of your property value, or you have to pick your whole building up and move it up to meet these standards. And that's just crazy for me. It doesn't define specifically when that 10-year period starts. Does it start only when this thing is adopted, or has it already started? How far, or does it matter? Can they go back 10 years and start from there? It doesn't say anything about that. So who's to know how that's going to come out, how it's going to affect people? There's just too much stuff in this. I just feel like adopting this with it. I mean, you're being told that people can't qualify for flood insurance if the city doesn't adopt these standards or incorporate these standards into their plan. And I don't see any document that says that. I hear people saying that, but I don't see the document that says that. So it just leaves a lot of questions in my mind that haven't been answered, and that I can't find anybody to answer them really. I really appreciate Maddie's work on this and what she's done, but it just feels to me like it's premature to take this action at this point. I understand that you're bound by some laws and rules to work on this mitigation plan with the county, but to say that we're going to live by FEMA standards because otherwise they're going to hurt us financially, it's almost feels like blackmail to me. And I just wanted this opportunity to share that with y'all. And I appreciate you taking the time to listen to me. That's pretty much all I've got to say right now.
Thank you very much. Have you gotten a response from Ms. Phillips or Ms. Amberg about the questions that you had?
Well, to some degree, no, I guess not. If you see my written comments, you see what I said about like the cut and fill requirement. My property, now again, I'm not in the city, but I could be, my neighbors are. I have only about 3/4 of an acre. So if I want to fill in the low spots, I have to provide some low spot in some other area as making a place for the water to go. On a small lot, you can't do that. I think this was written for like ranchers and farmers and maybe even woodlot owners who have significant property where they could do that, where they could, make a low spot to compensate for filling in a low spot somewhere else. I can't do
May
that
I
on my
please-
property. And I haven't talked to anybody who knows how to fix that problem.
Okay,
I haven't
May
talked
I
to
ask-
anybody who knows
Councilor
about
McReynolds?
when the
Councilor
cumulative
McReynolds, there will be a
substantial
time for
improvement
councilors
starts,
to make
when
comment,
we start
ask questions.
counting the years. No, I guess I don't have a good feeling about this at this point.
So I would like councilors to hold off on your questions for the caller. I would like to first give the opportunity for our city staff to respond to Ms. Mogstad's concerns. Michelle, go ahead.
I'll start by saying that while I appreciate the concerns of Ms. Mogstad, we have we may not have answered her concerns at this point because that's not what's before you tonight. What's before you tonight is a proposal for your approval that allows us to adopt standards that would allow people in our community to apply for flood insurance. So that's what we're really looking at tonight, is whether or not we meet the criteria, FEMA's criteria for flood insurance. And Maddie and I discussed this. Maddie can really talk about the details of this, but the overarching policy question tonight is, you know, do you want to come into compliance with the FEMA flood insurance program? Or is there some other methodology you want to put forward to protect those in our community who are in the flood zone and the flood plain? Which, you know, we do have some significant properties in those areas. So this, I agree with Ms. Mogstad, and I applaud her for bringing this up, and I really applaud her for attending tonight. It wasn't easy for her, and I think she's got some great questions. However, they're not really within the jurisdiction of Crestwell to answer. We don't have jurisdiction over ODOT. We don't have jurisdiction over the county area. We don't have jurisdiction over the landfill. I wish I could, you know, assure her that all of her concerns would be addressed by those bodies. But again, we are limited in what we can do. Maddie can give you much more precise information about what the program entails, but that's kind of the overarching principle we're looking at. Maddie, do you have anything to add?
Thank you, Michelle.
Michelle, I think you covered most of what I can offer. I could go ahead and provide the staff report related to the item that you have before you, councilors, and mayor, and perhaps touch on those points as we review the material through the public hearing. And I'm happy to answer some of the specific questions about some of the items that Ms. Mogstad raised in the explanation of what is included in the replacement of section 2.7 of our development code. So if it's all right with you, Mayor and councilors, I'll proceed with delivering the staff report.
That would be great, Maddie. Thank you much.
Absolutely. You have before you material that was discussed both at the February 20th Planning Commission meeting and at your work session in the month of February. You will remember and recall, councilors, that you adopted or ratified the multi-jurisdictional natural hazard mitigation plan that the county put together with staff help from the city of Crestwell. And in fact, you'll also remember that there is a specific annex that the city of Crestwell had created for our region in particular to analyze hazard, risk, and the likelihood and severity of those natural hazards on the community. Part of that, you'll also remember, was the inclusion of a set of policies. And those policies are what you see before you tonight as an amendment to the Crestwell Comprehensive Land Use Plan related to Goal 7. And those focus on primarily on the protection of life and property, and the provision of critical services like emergency operations centers, locations for mass care and shelter, first responders like fire protection and ambulance protection. All of those are identified in different ways throughout the policies that you see related to Goal 7 within our comprehensive plan. For example, the preference or recommendation that certain facilities not be located in places where a risk cannot be mitigated. An example of that is a property that our friends at the South Lane Fire and Rescue District owned on the east side of Crestwell that was in the floodplain, and there had been discussions about creating a second station at that location, which had some problematic elements, including that it could be flooded in the case of a flood event, making that facility less than operational. Another area that we are that this set of amendments addresses are areas related to floodplain. Ms. Mogstad spoke to some regulatory frameworks that are in fact promulgated or distributed by FEMA. These are federal standards that relate to the National Flood Insurance Program. In review of some of the existing requirements that Crestwell has on its books, many of the criteria, so the standard at which, for example, a house or a structure must be elevated above base flood elevation, is the same. The difference in this case, particularly related to the changes that are proposed in this set of changes that you see before you, councilors, is that the process is a bit different than our current development code includes. And I think I alluded to that in my previous presentation at the work session. So what you have before you is an updated version of the set of requirements that when someone in the city of Crestwell's jurisdiction applies to the National Flood Insurance Program because their property is identified within the 100-year floodplain, that property will, one, hopefully have had some preventative measures taken. For example, when that structure was built, to be built at or above the base flood elevation, depending on what the requirements are for that structure, which will substantially reduce the likelihood of that property being flooded and perhaps lost, as well as providing an opportunity for those owners to purchase flood insurance. So when we talk about the development standards and requirements for floodplain identified properties, in this instance, we're talking specifically about what are the development criteria that are required of a property that's identified within the risk map. So the Federal Emergency Management Administration's flood risk map. That map you'll see some iterations of in the coming months. We're a little bit unclear on timeline as to when that will happen based on some of the closures related to COVID. But you will see those maps be reviewed, and I believe that there is actually a significant statutory requirement of about a year for those maps to be available and to have ample opportunity to address concerns. From the items that you have before you, I guess there are just a couple changes that I need to bring up, but I'll start by telling you a little bit about what folks have commented on. So you've heard from Ms. Mogstad and you've received her comment letter. There were also two others that provided comment at the February 20th Planning Commission meeting. And I just want to share a summary of some of their comments. And those comments you'll be able to see also. I apologize, the timeline didn't quite line up, but you'll see those comments in the minutes from the Planning Commission meeting from February 20th. The first comment was from Thomas Yee, who lives at 66 Hagens Court, and he reviewed the materials that you have before you and asked several questions about risk designation and the impact of those risk designations on the city's ability to grow. putting fill in the floodplain could potentially affect or impact other properties, knowing that displacement often changes the way that water could or might flood a particular area. And I was able to address some of his concerns primarily through some opportunities that will come up when FEMA rolls out their public engagement program related to the map updates. But in particular, the city will certainly consider whether or not certain properties are at risk of flood when we analyze and recommend any exploration of our urban growth boundary amendment. Certainly, we will also be able to discount in our buildable land inventory the areas that are identified within the 100-year floodplain. If they are not developed, they may be removed from our buildable land inventory because of the cost related to or perceived barrier to developing those properties. Secondly, Jenny Carmichael from 310 Magnolia Drive, she commented recounting primarily some experience that she had in 1995 when she bought her house, and she watched the construction of the villas at Emerald Valley, for whom she did at one point represent as the president of that HOA. And she recommended that the city take as many precautionary measures as they can to try to mitigate the circumstance that she feels she is in, where she purchased a property that was removed from the floodplain and now may be placed back in the floodplain, and she may now have to buy flood insurance now that the circumstances of risk assignment have changed. And so her recommendation was to try to prevent this scenario of are you in, are you out, this kind of thing, by placing the appropriate development code constraints on properties that may be at risk of flooding. So those were two individuals who commented at the meeting. They also provided some a written comment. It was not provided in your packet, but it's primarily because their comments focused on the experience that they had with previous flood events and also the assignment of risk, both of which are elements and criteria that we will use to look at the mapping component of this question. And tonight I'd like to redirect your attention, councilors and mayor, to the task at hand, which is looking at the policy statements related to Goal 7 and also the Section 2.7 of the Crestwell Development Code related to the floodplain overlay zone. Just one more item, and then I'll open up for questions. In your packet materials, I provided a draft version of Ordinance 539, which provides a series of statements related to how this project came to fruition and some of the elements that staff has drawn on in order to prepare the materials. One item that our city attorney did point out in short order, and it's perhaps my omission that in some of the formatting of your materials that it occurred, but I'd like to read in the section labeled Section 3 of that ordinance to provide a slight amendment just to be sure that we connect all the dots between which exhibits produce what changes in our code. Particularly, Section 3 states, the City of Crestwell hereby amends the Crestwell Development Code as shown in Exhibit C to reflect, and here's where the changes begin, changes to Section 1.3 and replacement of Chapter 2.7 and achieve compliance with the Oregon Flood Hazard Management Ordinance and statewide land use goal 7. I recommend, our attorney recommended this change primarily because in your materials, the Exhibit C header replaced the header that said Crestwell Development Code Floodplain Overlay Zone Section 2.7. So forgive me in the technological challenge that might have posed. does make fairly ambiguous the connection between Exhibit C and the fact that it will replace section 2.7 of our development code. And that's what I've got for now.
Okay, thanks, Maddie. Really appreciate it. Okay, I will open it up to questions
Mr. Mayor?
for Maddie or for Michelle, to the counselors.
Mayor Sederhall,
Yes?
Roberta's got her hand up.
Could you ask if Maddie could repeat that one more time, please?
I'll let you relay it, Jim.
Could Maddie repeat that one more time?
Absolutely, Roberta. And I'm happy also to provide it to you in an email. I think that would also help.
Okay.
But it will read Section 3. The City of Crestwell hereby amends the Crestwell Development Code as shown in Exhibit C to reflect changes to Section 1.3 and replacement of Chapter 2.7 to achieve compliance with the Oregon Flood Hazard Management Ordinance and statewide land use goal 7.
Thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
Michelle, go ahead. I'm not hearing you. I show you as muted.
Yes, I did. Were we able to reconnect with Judy? I saw that she had an email that she was trying to reconnect.
I was going to give her the opportunity to answer that question. So she said that she sent me a text message and said that she was having difficulty with the mic maybe not working. So Councilor Drago, would you like me to read that before you get the answer? I know she's having a problem with her microphone is what she said. She said, sorry, Mayor, not sure why my mic is not working. It says I'm unmuted, but no one can hear me. Not sure how to fix this currently.
But she can hear us, so
She can hear us.
she could text you as to whether or not she has a conflict of interest, and then she could text you any questions she has, and then she can text you her vote. So that would work.
I'll go ahead and do that part while did you have another question, Michelle, or not? If not, then I'll open the question and answers up to counselors, to our city staff in regards to the presentation that Maddie gave.
Martha McReynolds here, may I?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. I'm sincerely apologetic for interrupting Joni Mogstad as she was talking. I simply had a question for Maddie and Michelle regarding wetland mitigation. Can a small property owner bank the wetland that she's wanting to change, use the wetland mitigations bank? And I know this is not related to tonight's thing, but perhaps that is a solution for her a little bit.
Counselor, I'm not sure that that's necessarily a component of what we're considering tonight, but there are always options to either preserve wetlands or mitigate wetlands through the banking system that you indicated.
Yeah, I realize it's related to tonight's topic. I was just wondering if that was a bone that we could throw to Ms. Mogstad to encourage her that there is some sort of a solution if she wanted to change a small portion of her small lot. She does have it sounds like she doesn't consider that she has options as a home or as a property owner if she changes it, and she does. Anyway, it's moot. I don't want to use our time on this. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Maddie.
Okay, counselors, any other questions for our staff? Okay, I did receive a response back from Councilor Drago, and she says she's answering the question, and she says that she has no conflict of interest in answer to that question. And at this point in time, she has no questions for the staff. She does say that Maddie has done a wonderful job going over this and being detailed in the orientation on this. So you got a kudos as well there, Maddie.
Thanks, Judy.
Okay, so that takes care of that part, the staff report. And then the second, do we have any audience testimony, Michelle? Anybody there at City Hall at all? No? Okay, you're good. So no questions in favor, no questions in opposition outside of the one that we received on the phone. Then is that what I'm understanding? Go ahead, Maddie.
I have one clerical item to add. Forgive me, it was at the bottom of my note sheet. One item that would be nice to include in the final, the permanent record that Roberta will file that you'll sign with the ordinance is to replace the header at the top of that page to read the correct section of the development code for Exhibit C. And that would read floodplain overlay zone, parentheses F/FP dash section 2.7, please.
Okay. Thank you for your detail on that. That's wonderful. And I know that you and Roberta will get all that stuff cleared out and taken care of. So councilors, one more time, are there any questions, further questions for staff before we move forward? Okay, Michelle?
I just want to remind that if someone wishes to make a motion, the motion should be as written with the addition of as amended. And this is an ordinance, so it needs to be read twice.
I see the little thank you from Maddie over there too. So even though she's in a different location, I see her, ha ha. All right, very good. And I don't see any further comments from Councilor Drago. So at this point in time, I will close the hearing. Is there any further deliberation, council? Okay, hearing none, I am calling for a motion. Councilor McReynolds. I thought I heard Councilor.
I'm first in the motion. I just don't want to read it twice. I think.
I'll do it.
Bouncing here.
Council President Knudsen would like to make the motion.
All right. I move that the city council adopt ordinance 539, an ordinance amending the Creswell Comprehensive Land Use Plan and Creswell Development Code related to Goal 7 natural hazard policies and floodplain overlay zone as amended. I move that the city council adopt ordinance 539, an ordinance amending the Creswell Comprehensive Land Use Plan and Creswell Development Code related to Goal 7 natural hazard policies and floodplain overlay zone as amended.
Very good. Thank you, Council President Knudsen. So a motion on ordinance 539 has been made. Is there a second?
I would second.
Okay, could you please identify who you are?
Councilor Reynolds.
Very good. So we have a motion to move forward with the vote for ordinance number 539 by Council President Knudsen, and we have a second from Councilor McReynolds. So I will go ahead and call for the vote, and we will again do this by roll call. So I will again follow the alphabetical. Councilor Castilla.
Councilor Castillo, I vote yes.
Thank you. Councilor Drago. Councilor Drago says in favor. She votes yes. Councilor President Knudsen.
Amy Knudsen, I vote yes.
Councilor Inman.
Counselor Inman, I vote yes.
Councilor McReynolds.
Councilor McReynolds, I vote yes.
Councilor Prochu.
Councilor Prochu, I vote yes.
Can you please repeat? I did not catch that.
Councilor Prochu, I vote yes.
Okay, that time we heard it. Very good. Thank you, sir. And Councilor Zettervall votes no, yes. Are there any no votes? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. So we have passage of ordinance number 539. That concludes our agenda for this evening. I do see that we have one agenda item coming forward on April 16th. We have a planning commission telephonic meeting. Let's hope that the model that we've created here for our staff has given some vote of improvement and learned some things about how well and how I thought it went really well personally. I think, we did for a first try. Yeah, there you go, Maddie. 2 thumbs up, Cheryl. That is it. So huge kudos to City Manager Amberg and also for Finance Director Piper for their help in getting this and making the last minute runs to try and find the electronic equipment that was needed and so forth. So at this point, that concludes our meeting. Again, I want to remind Creswell folks, please be safe. and please stay healthy. So that concludes our meeting for tonight. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Mayor, Council.
Thanks very much. Really appreciate it. All right. So do we need to do I guess we don't need to do a video recap.